Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Tonight on Gravitas, Iran reportedly outrightly rejecting US President Donald Trump's ceasefire proposal. That's the top focus. Instead, Iran has laid out its conditions. In fact, Iran says Trump is talking to itself. The US is talking to itself. Meanwhile, the US has increased deployment of elite forces in the region. We are decoding what all of this means for West Asia and beyond. Also on the show for you tonight, does Trump want peace while Pete Hegseth wants war? We tell you why this question is even being raised. Also telling you all about how the oil supply crunch is spreading from the Gulf to the rest of the world as the ripple effects unfold. All this and more coming up. The war in West Asia continues to escalate, both in terms of the scale, also the wider impact. In fact, Israel has just approved the call-up of up to 400,000 reservists, while the US is planning to deploy around 3,000 elite troops towards the region. And amid this increased military deployment, Iran has drawn a hard red line. According to Iranian state TV, Tehran has reviewed Donald Trump's peace proposal and deems it excessive. Iran has, in fact, outlined 5 key conditions under which Tehran would consider ending the war. The first condition, calling for an immediate halt as far as all attacks and targeted assassinations are concerned. Tehran is also demanding guaranteed and clearly defined compensation for war damages and reparations. That's not all. It insists on a comprehensive end to the conflict across all fronts, along with international recognition and firm guarantees of its sovereign rights over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has further made it clear that it will not allow the United States or Trump to dictate the timing of the war's conclusion, maintaining that the conflict will end only on its own terms. So that's a red line, and only when its conditions are fully met. That's not all. In a significant message to Washington, Iran is not just denying talks. Rather, Iran's military is saying the United States is trying to rebrand failure as diplomacy and warning that the era of empty promises is over. Listen to this.
Do not call your defeat an agreement. The era of your promises is over. Today, there are 2 fronts in the world, truth and falsehood, and any free seeker of truth will not be deceived by your media waves. Has the level of your internal discord reached the point where you are negotiating with yourselves?
Now, just to break this down, this is among Iran's latest rejections yet of any talks with the United States. Even as claims of back-channel diplomacy from the US grow louder, because on the other side, US President Donald Trump continuing to insist negotiations are very much on. Listen to this now.
Negotiations right now. They're doing it along with Marco, JD. We have a number of people doing it. And the other side, I can tell you, they'd like to make a deal.
The war on the ground, meanwhile, further intensifying. Israel claiming it has struck deep inside Iran, targeting a critical submarine development facility in Isfahan, described as a key hub for naval systems and unmanned vessels. 2 more strikes, it claims, hit naval cruise missile production sites in Tehran, aimed at disrupting long-range weapons capabilities. In neighboring Iraq, an airstrike hit a military clinic in Anbar province, killing at least 7 soldiers and injuring 13. Iraq calls it a blatant violation of international law. No group, in fact, has claimed responsibility so far. Mourners and Iraqi soldiers gathered at a teaching hospital as the bodies of the soldiers killed in the airstrike were brought in.
How long will we stay like this? We are losing our sons every day. They say the airstrikes are just on the popular mobilization forces, but those are security forces. The Iraqi army is being hit, and these victims are dying. What did they do to deserve this? What did they do to deserve this?
And inside Iran, the humanitarian crisis is only deepening. According to Iranian authorities, at least 20 hospitals have been hit since the 28th of February. Those are the numbers on your screen, just to look at the region. 9 reportedly partially or fully out of service, including Tehran's Gandhi Hospital, which has shut down completely. At sea, meanwhile, tensions are rising even further. Iran claims it fired cruise missiles at the US aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, forcing it to change position. And there is still no confirmation from the United States on the issue. Iran's Revolutionary Guards also claiming missile and drone strikes on US bases in Kuwait, Jordan, Bahrain, along with attacks on Israeli targets. In Kuwait, meanwhile, a drone strike sent a massive plume of smoke over Kuwait International Airport. Those are the images. Kuwaiti authorities saying multiple drones were shot down, but one hit a fuel tank, sparking a fire. And according to a British think tank, the first 2 weeks of the war have come at a staggering cost. Over 11,000 munitions fired in just 16 days, costing around $26 billion, with expensive interceptors being used to shoot down far cheaper drones. And replacing these stockpiles could cost more than double. So the war in West Asia continues to expand militarily, geographically, politically, with every passing day. Meanwhile, the United States is preparing for the next phase of action in Iran, one that could swing between war and diplomacy. On one hand, Washington is stepping up military pressure. On the other, it is quietly laying the groundwork for talks, which Iran reportedly rejected. Reports suggesting the US is planning to deploy around 3,000 troops from its elite 82nd Airborne Division, which is one of the most combat-ready units in the world. combat ready. They are expected to join about 2,000 Marines already heading towards the region. Together, they will represent a rapid response force capable of striking fast and holding ground. The 82nd Airborne can deploy anywhere in the world within just 18 hours. Its specialty is basically forcible entry operations. Paratroopers dropping behind enemy lines, securing key targets, opening the doors for larger military action in a way. From the daring parachute drops during D-Day in World War II to battles in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, its legacy has been spoken about multiple times. The unit now, it may be called upon once again, reports suggesting these troops could be tasked with seizing strategic targets, including Karg Island. But even as the troops prepare, diplomacy is not off the table. In fact, the US has put forward that proposal to Iran, remember, the plan calling for limits on Tehran's nuclear program, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, a temporary ceasefire to create space for negotiations. Reports also suggesting that senior military commanders have submitted detailed plans for potential ground operations, even as the White House remains publicly silent on whether or when such forces might be used. But then Iran is not backing down either. Iranian military leaders issued a direct challenge, daring the US forces to come closer. Senior officials saying Iran has spent over 2 decades preparing for exactly this kind of conflict. And they claim they are ready. Iran standing firm on its demands that it has publicly put out for any peace agreement with the US. Iranian media saying that Iran rejected Trump's 15-point peace proposal, and the demands being a complete halt to the aggression and assassinations, the establishment of concrete mechanisms to ensure that the war is not reimposed on the Islamic Republic, guaranteed and clearly defined payment of war damages and reparations, the conclusion of the war across all fronts and for all resistance groups involved throughout the region. Lastly, international recognition and guarantees regarding Iran's sovereign right to exercise authority over the Strait of Hormuz. And amid the growing disapproval for the West Asia war, is US President Donald Trump trying to play good cop, bad cop, while positioning himself as a peacemaker, with his emphasis on a deal with Iran. The US Secretary of War came in for a rather awkward mention. In his latest media interaction, Trump specifically mentioned that Hegseth does not want the war to end. According to the US President, Hegseth and General Dan Kane were the only 2 people who were disappointed to hear about negotiations with Iran.
2 people that were quite disappointed. I don't want to say this, but I have to. I said, Pete and General Raisin Kane, I think this thing's going to be settled very soon. Here they go. Oh, that's too bad. Pete didn't want it to be settled. These guys are doing a great job. That's a good attitude, though, Tom, right? They were not interested in settlement. They were interested in just winning this thing.
Now, here's the thing. On his part, Hegseth made his department's goal amply clear. He claimed that no modern military in history has been so rapidly obliterated with overwhelming firepower. And his take on the talks with Iran was rather blunt. In fact, the US Secretary of War said, I'm quoting, "We negotiate with bombs."
With bombs. You have a choice as we loiter over the top of Tehran, as the president talked about your future. The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary to ensure the interests of the United States of America are achieved on that battlefield. This is not Iraq and Afghanistan. This is not a president who's interested in vague end state.
And earlier this week, Trump sought to shift the focus of commencing the war on Hexet. He said that Hexet was the first person in his team who suggested attacking Iran when he consulted the senior administration members about the situation in the region. Now, these statements also assuming significance in the light of the rising anti-war sentiment among Americans. As per the latest poll by Reuters, the US president's approval rating plunged to 36%, which is the lowest ranking since his return to power. So that's significant. That's not all. Around 61% people expressed their disapproval of the US strikes on Iran. So that's the sentiment on the ground in a way. And Trump and his team's latest narrative when it comes to Iran also raising another question. Is this an attempt to extricate the US president from a conflict which has spiraled out of control in a way? With Tehran's unrelenting stance on the negotiations, the future course of action by the US will be closely observed. And zooming out, the ripple effects of the West Asia war widening, now being experienced and felt far beyond. What began as an energy shock is rapidly turning into something far bigger. For communities around the world, this war is no longer just about oil and gas. It's fast becoming a war that hits the most basic need of all, that's food. The reason is in that critical global choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is not just a lifeline for energy supplies, but also a key route for fertilizer ingredients like urea, sulfur, which are, of course, essential for modern agriculture. And with the disruptions in the region, nearly 1/3 to half of global fertilizer trade has been affected. 50% of global urea supply is also affected because major suppliers like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE have been stranded, leading to a price volatility because of the disruption of the global supply chains. So that's the impact. And it's also more severe across structurally vulnerable economies. Countries across Africa and Asia depend heavily on imported fertilizers and fuel. While households spend a large share of income on food, as costs rise, food prices are climbing sharply. In some regions, essential items have become 20 to over 100% more expensive. But then this is not just the developing nations scenario that is facing the impact. The shock waves are now reaching the United States as well, of course. America, despite being a major agricultural powerhouse, is deeply linked to the global fertilizer markets. It imports about 1/4 of its fertilizer needs, including a significant share of nitrogen. The disrupted energy flow is impacting American farmers and growing pressure on agriculture industry that forms the backbone of the US economy. The food and agriculture sector in the US is valued at over $10 trillion, accounting for about 20% of the economy and supporting more than 48 million jobs. So any sustained fertilizer shortage does not just impact farms. It ripples through supply chains, retail, transport, even tourism. And then there is India. India's exposure to this crisis is twofold, both as a consumer and as an exporter. On one hand, higher global fertilizer prices can push up the input costs for Indian farmers. On the other hand, India's agricultural exports are deeply tied to West Asian markets. And over the past decade, the Gulf has become a key destination for products like rice, bananas, spices, meat, dairy. In fact, more than 70% of India's exports of certain items like sheep and goat meat, fresh beef, bananas, some spices, go to this region. So any disruption in trade flows, whether from the conflict, the shipping bottlenecks, or the economic slowdown, could hit Indian exporters hard. And the consequences could be felt across farm incomes, rural demand, and the broader agricultural economy. So what we are witnessing basically is a shift from an energy crisis to a food crisis in a way, from regional conflict to global consequences, serious ones. Because when fertilizer supply is choked or impacted, food production could come next. And when food is impacted, it's not just markets that react, it's millions of households around the world that feel the pinch. Meanwhile, the US and Israel continue to attack Iran. Day 26 of the war, Iran, on the other hand, continuing to launch its fierce counteroffensive. IRGC saying it has launched its 80th wave of attacks on Israel and the US bases. And this also comes at a time when US President Donald Trump pushes to try and end the war. But Iranian state TV reporting that Tehran has rejected that peace proposal, laying out conditions to end the war. Our next report, breaking this down for you, getting you the latest images from the war zone.
Israel and the US are using heavy weaponry on Iran. The US military claims to have destroyed more than 9,000 military targets inside Iran, significantly removing the Iranian regime's combat capability. The US military released these new images showing the destruction of Iranian military sites. Israeli forces have also ramped up their attack. The Israeli military says that it has dropped 15,000 bombs on Iran since the war started on February 28. The Israeli military claims to have struck a submarine development facility in Isfahan. The International Atomic Energy Agency says it does not know the status of the new Iranian enrichment facility in Isfahan that is in an underground nuclear complex. Iranian military says that it continues to launch devastating strikes on Israeli and US targets. The IRGC claims to have attacked military command of Israeli army in the northern city of Safed. Iran says that in its latest attack it targeted Tel Aviv, Kiryat Shmona and Bnei Brak.
We state this clearly, until it is our will, nothing will go back to the way it was. That will only come about when the very thought of acting against the Iranian nation is completely wiped from your corrupt minds.
The IRGC says that it has also launched fresh strikes on US bases in Kuwait, Jordan and Bahrain, even as the US and Israeli military claims to have crippled Iran's launch capacity. The Sejel and Khorramshahr missiles are causing destruction. The exchange of heavy fire comes as Iran's military rejects President Donald Trump's assertion the US was in negotiations to end the war, saying the US is negotiating with itself. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
So what we're going to do now is break down those ripple effects for you further, telling you more about how the shock waves from the West Asia war are spreading far beyond the region and impacting you, millions of households. What started out as a geopolitical flashpoint in the region is now making its presence felt in a way into an energy crisis. Now, the world's most critical oil supply routes are under strain, and as the oil supplies get squeezed, the impact is naturally being felt on the streets, in homes, at fuel stations around the world. So let's just take a closer look and tell you more about how different parts of the world are being impacted. We are starting off from how Asia to Africa, from South America to the Pacific and South Asia, the oil supply crunch is now a global story. So let's take a look at how the crisis is unfolding. You can see how the fears of fuel shortages, of course, that have been talked about are playing out country by country. In New Zealand, for example, households are feeling the pinch as fuel costs are surging. Let's just move on now. Cambodia, petrol shortages have led to long queues. Chile also witnessing the impact, seeing a rush at petrol pumps as people try to beat the impending price hikes. So that's the sentiment in a way on the ground, as you can see. Let's also talk about what the situation is looking like in China, where fuel stations in Beijing are packed with consumers bracing for what lies ahead, for bracing also for the impact. In India, meanwhile, scenes of long queues have been surfacing in Hyderabad, even as authorities try to calm the shortage fears. Also in Japan, the government is preparing to release strategic oil reserves to stabilize the supply. And in the Philippines, let's just move on to the Philippines for now. The situation there also escalating to what can be called an energy emergency. Now, these, of course, are not isolated incidents like we just pointed out. They are a part of a larger global disruption. So it's not just systems that are suffering. It's people, households who are being impacted. Let's just play out for you some of these voices, how ordinary citizens around the world are reacting to this oil crunch.
This is hitting us very hard. We depend on fuel, and we are going to do our best to make sure this price hike does not get passed on to the parents, because things are already tough enough as it is.
Well, it's too high. Yeah, you see what I'm running, it costs a fortune. But yeah, I guess I'll have to start just not driving around so much. So yeah, it's going up 10, 20 cents a day at least. It's yeah, it's crazy.
For a transportation service worker like me, I want the war in the Middle East to end soon so that the price of gas goes down to normal and we can do business as usual.
And the thing is, from transport workers in Chile to residents in New Zealand and Cambodia, the rising costs, longer waits, the growing uncertainty is just about everywhere. Let's also break down for you what's driving this crisis. The global oil markets, of course, are in turmoil, and according to the International Energy Agency, the world is facing one of the largest supply disruptions in history. Global oil supply could drop by as much as 8 million barrels per day. That's the impact that we are talking about. Now, at the same time, Gulf countries are being forced to cut production by nearly 10 million barrels per day. Not because they want to, of course, but because they simply cannot export it. And with key routes blocked, storage filling up, and logistics breaking down, production itself is being scaled back. And the impact is uneven, but also widespread. Here's a look at who is being hit the hardest and how governments are responding. Let's just zoom into Southeast Asia for now. Countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia are already under strain. Governments also, in fact, have declared national emergencies. They've ordered remote work, even shutting down fuel pumps in some parts. On to South Asia now. Let's just shift focus. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan taking strict measures, from 4-day work weeks to bans on fuel sales in plastic containers, which is aimed at preventing hoarding, basically. So that's what things are looking like in that region. Let's just shift gears and move to East Asia. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, tapping into strategic reserves, while also introducing domestic price caps in order to protect the consumers. In Africa, countries like Egypt, Kenya, resorting to early closures of malls and restaurants, along with export restrictions and fuel rationing. So those are the kind of measures that are being taken there. So from emergency declarations to rationing to price controls, the global response is intensifying due to the massive stress on supply chains, economies being under pressure, everyday life being impacted. And as the crisis deepens, one thing remains clear: what happens in this region is now impacting the entire world. All right, so switching gears now. The deadly escalation unfolding along the Israel-Lebanon border. Israel stepping up airstrikes across Lebanon, targeting areas in Beirut's southern suburbs as well. Building collapses, thousands fleeing their homes. Hezbollah is firing back with rockets and drones, pushing the region closer to a wider and more dangerous confrontation. Our next report telling you more.
Explosions, smoke, and destruction. Israel has intensified strikes across Lebanon, leaving a trail of death and ruin. These are the visuals from the southern Lebanese city of Tyre, where a loud explosion rocked a residential neighborhood. The attack is the latest in an aggressive bombing campaign by Israel. Israeli strikes have also been reported in Beirut's southern suburbs. Streets could be seen covered in debris as the strikes damaged residential buildings. The attack has triggered a mass exodus.
It's enough. We can't take it anymore. My nerves are shot. I can't. Sometimes I think I should just go throw myself in the sea and end it. Just end it. Is this a life? Is this a place for someone to sleep?
Lebanese authorities say over 1,000 people have been killed so far and over 1 million have been displaced. But Israel has vowed to intensify its campaign. Defense Minister Israel Katz has vowed to occupy southern Lebanon up to the Litani River.
I don't think we have a position of annexation in Lebanon. I would say more than that. We don't have an interest to be in Lebanon. Today we have very limited forces next to the border. We have no choice.
Militant group Hezbollah has said it would fight to prevent Israeli troops from occupying southern Lebanon, calling such a move an existential threat to the Lebanese state.
Now, we are facing Israeli aggression. We are in a defensive situation. The resistance fighters are battling in that area to prevent Israel from achieving this objective. This poses an existential threat to Lebanon as a state and to its geographically defined borders recognized internationally. Therefore, we have no choice but to confront this aggression and cling to the land.
Despite intensifying strikes, Hezbollah is hitting back hard at Israel. The Iran-backed militant group claimed a series of attacks targeting Israeli troops in South Lebanon. In northern Israel, repeated air raid sirens sent residents to shelters. A woman was killed in the attack, and several cars were damaged by missile shrapnel. Sirens rang out across northern Israel, almost non-stop for hours, warning of drones and rockets fired from Lebanon. Reports say Hezbollah is firing nearly 100 rockets daily at Israel. As strikes intensify and rocket fire continues, fears of a wider war are growing. Civilians on both sides are caught in the crossfire, with homes destroyed and communities displaced. With no signs of de-escalation, the prospect of a prolonged war and regional instability is growing by the day.
Shifting focus now, Russia and Ukraine stepping up attacks as the war enters a rather crucial phase. Fresh strikes hit cities while fighting intensified on the ground. Both Russia and Ukraine have launched a record number of drones on each other. Take a look.
Russia is increasing pressure across multiple fronts. Airstrikes, artillery fire, and ground movements are all rising at the same time. The pattern is clear. This is a coordinated push, not isolated attacks. Russian army launched one of the largest drone attacks since the start of the war. Ukraine says Russia has launched over 1,000 drones. This is the moment a drone hits residential area in Ukraine's Kharkiv.
We are in shock because the house has been destroyed and is badly damaged. You can see this side of the building, but the yard is destroyed on the opposite side. The kitchen is destroyed. There was a fire on the upper floor. We don't know where she, the mother-in-law, was. She was probably in the kitchen, right by the porch. The neighbors said she was in a state of severe stress and that her face and head were badly injured. She was taken to the regional hospital.
Ukraine, on the other hand, is also launching fierce attacks. Moscow says that a Ukrainian attack sparked a fire at a major port in the country's northwest in a barrage of almost 400 drones. Ukrainian drones flew off course out of Russian airspace, one hitting the chimney of a power plant in Estonia, the other landing in Latvia. Earlier this week, Ukraine hit another of Russia's major Baltic seaport, Primorsk, triggering a large fire that poured thick black smoke into the air. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And in a major boost to India's ever-expanding space ambitions, plans are now underway for a third spaceport near Gujarat's coastline. After the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota, Andhra Pradesh, and the upcoming spaceport in Tamil Nadu, India is preparing to add another strategic launch facility along the Arabian Sea. Gujarat Science and Technology Minister, in fact, confirmed in the State Assembly that a suitable site has been identified after consultations with the space regulator in space. In fact, assessments by the Indian Space Research Organization found the proposed coastal stretch to be technically sound and fully capable of supporting rocket launches. This development is expected to accelerate India's mission frequency and strengthen its launch infrastructure, especially on the Western Front. The announcement of a third satellite launch center coming at a time when India has become a trusted and cost-effective global partner, especially for launching satellites. Official data showing that ISRO has launched over 430 foreign satellites for global clients since 1999, along with more than 130 spacecraft missions. Over 98% of the foreign satellites have been launched since January 2007, including a world record of 104 satellites in a single mission in February 2017. The upcoming spaceport in Tamil Nadu is expected to further ease the launch pressure on Sriharikota, which became operational in October 1971. And now, with Gujarat entering the equation, India is well on its way to building a multi-port launch ecosystem, sending out a clear message to the world that India is not just participating in this space race, rather, it is redefining it. Switching gears, Pakistan brick kilns have often faced scrutiny over hazardous working conditions and exploitative child labor. And now a kidney racket targeting these kiln workers has come to the fore. Nearly 5 million people, most of whom are bonded laborers, work at 20,000 brick kilns across the country. And a new report by The Guardian exposing the alleged underbelly of this business. Thousands of these workers reportedly being coerced into selling their kidneys, allegedly. And this stemming from a systematic debt trap in the name of recovering cash advances paid to the workers. The owners deduct close to half of their wages. Thus, workers get barely $3 per every 1,000 bricks that they make. According to reports, some owners compound their misery further by inflating their debts and undercounting bricks that they make. As per reports, such vulnerable workers are lured to sell their kidney for just above $1,000. And now this also comes as Pakistan banned commercial sale of human organs way back in 2007. In 2010, it strengthened the law by making trafficking of organs punishable by up to 10 years in prison and a fine of $3,400. This is not an aberration. 3 years ago, a major kidney racket was exposed in Pakistan by the local police. Pakistan's Interior Minister, who was then serving as Chief Minister of Punjab province, revealed that a gang leader conducted operations on 328 people to remove their kidneys. These kidneys were then sold to clients for approximately $34,000 each. 8 people were arrested in connection with this racket that claimed at least 3 lives. Pakistan's closeness to Bangladesh has grown manifold since 2024, when Sheikh Hasina was ousted from power. And 2 years on, a newly elected government in Dhaka is once again turning the clock back, as it marked the anniversary of Operation Searchlight as Genocide Day. Bangladesh Prime Minister recalled the atrocities committed by Pakistan. He said, I'm quoting, Pakistani occupation forces carried out one of the most heinous genocides in history against unarmed people of Bangladesh. On this day, 55 years ago, the Pakistani army massacred several teachers, intellectuals, civilians at various places, including Dhaka University. And this marked the formal start of the Liberation War, which ended with Pakistan's humiliating defeat in December 1971. As per reports, millions of people died because of Pakistan's atrocities. Paying tribute to the martyrs, Rahman stressed on the importance of conveying the significance of this genocide to future generations. To commemorate this day, 1-minute symbolic blackout was conducted. Additionally, educational institutions organized discussions on the genocide and liberation war. If we look at the tenure of the Muhammad Yunus-led interim government there, Bangladesh and Pakistan boosted their ties like never before in a way, especially, in fact, in February 2025, both countries resumed direct trade for the first time since 1971. High-level military interactions between the two sides resumed. Additionally, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister completed a 2-day Dhaka visit last year, marking the first visit by the Pakistan minister to Bangladesh in 13 years. Also, direct flights between the two countries have resumed. Rahman's direct attack on Pakistan also assuming significance given the BNP's own track record. During its earlier stint in power from 2001 to 2006, the late Bangladeshi Prime Minister Khaleda Zia was perceived to have a favorable policy towards Pakistan. During this period, concerns were raised over growing activities of anti-India outfits on Bangladeshi soil. That's not all. In a clear sign of overture towards India, Bangladesh thanked New Delhi for its pivotal role in the liberation war.
Citizen of Bangladesh and someone who believes in 1971 and our freedom, of course, the help that India extended towards us, we will appreciate it always.
In fact, the BNP Supremo's remarks are also a sign of Bangladesh's changing political landscape. In the recently concluded general election, remember, the right-wing Jamaat-e-Islami made major inroads by winning its highest ever tally of 68 seats. On the campaign trail, BNP was at loggerheads with Jamaat for its nefarious role in 1971. This was seen as BNP's attempt to try and occupy the centrist space traditionally occupied by the banned Awami League. And only time will tell whether Rahman's anti-Pakistan stance will actually translate into a more substantial pro-India pivot. On to India now. In Odisha, after a gap of 48 years, the inventory of the treasure trove at Sri Jagannath temple started today. The treasure trove, in fact, is also called Ratna Bhandar. Let's also tell you about this process. It started this afternoon with authorized personnel entering the temple, strictly following a prescribed standard operating procedure. This exercise involves representatives from the temple administration, the Reserve Bank of India, government bank officials. Only a limited number of designated individuals in traditional attire are engaged in this exercise, reportedly. The ornaments are being counted, weighed, identified, will be cross-checked with records from 1978. The last inventory was conducted between May 13 and July 23, 1978. While the 1978 exercise took 72 days, officials reportedly said the current process will be completed faster with the use of modern technology. 2 gemologists are assisting in the identification. Each item is being digitally photographed. Gold ornaments reportedly being wrapped in yellow cloth, silver in white, other items in red, before being stored in 6 specially prepared chests to ensure transparency, videography, digital photography, and 3D mapping being undertaken, with gemologists assisting in identifying those precious stones. The ornaments are being wrapped in those cloths, secured in those specially prepared chests. Officials also clarifying that no monetary valuation is being carried out, and the focus remains on documentation and verification. The exercise would not disrupt the daily rituals at the 12th century shrine. Devotees have been allowed darshan from the outer barricade inside the temple. Let's now talk about a different kind of war, the one against deepfakes. First, have a look at these images. This is what the streets of Berlin looked like on Sunday, with thousands protesting against online sexual violence, expressing solidarity with victims. This also comes at a time when there has been renewed focus in the country on the menace of deepfakes. Earlier, a German celebrity came forward with allegations against a former partner. In fact, Germany has said it wants to make pornographic deepfakes a criminal offense after the celebrity accused her former husband of spreading sexualized images of her online. The case once again brought in focus digital violence on the internet when it comes to deepfakes and AI-generated images. And there is another development that has triggered serious concern: the rise in the amount of AI-generated child sexual abuse material found online. According to a safety watchdog, the Internet Watch Foundation, It rose by 14% last year, with the majority of videos showing the most extreme type of content. In fact, according to the Internet Watch Foundation, AI child sexual abuse material is widespread and growing. In 2025, it assessed 8,029 AI-generated images and videos as showing realistic child sexual abuse. Imagine that. With the imagery appearing across both dark web and mainstream commercial platforms on the clear web. So that's significant. And AI child sexual abuse material is increasingly extreme and sophisticated according to it. Also, that realistic full motion AI video content is now commonplace, it says. 65% of the videos identified by it last year were classified as Category A, the most extreme classification. Since it first started monitoring AI in early 2023, it has seen a frightening advancement in the ability to generate child sexual abuse imagery artificially. In fact, governments and regulators from Europe to Asia are cracking down on sexually explicit content. Considering the harm caused and the larger implications, there is a need for accountability and for this menace to be tackled head-on. AI child sexual abuse material causes real harm after all. Generative models can be trained and fine-tuned using photographic abuse imagery, directly re-victimizing survivors. According to the Internet Watch Foundation, advances in AI have driven the convergence of tools that previously required separate capabilities. So single applications can now generate abusive imagery with minimal effort, removing the need for technical expertise and significantly lowering barriers to entry. Also, according to it, the volume and the severity of AI imagery has increased exponentially because of the availability and ease of the tools. On to the world of sport for now. The IPL status as the fastest growing sports league in the world was cemented on Tuesday, as two deals worth almost a combined $4 billion were struck, and the value of the franchises as well as the league is only going to increase moving forward. It was Royal Challengers Bengaluru that became the most expensive franchise in IPL history. A consortium led by the Aditya Birla Group agreed to buy the reigning IPL and WPL champions for a staggering $1.78 billion. The deal was announced by the existing owners of the franchise, United Spirits Limited. As per USL, the consortium comprises of the Aditya Birla Group, the Times of India Group, Bolt Ventures, and Blackstone. Once the deal is formally completed, both the men's and women's team will be owned and operated by this consortium. The next step involves the deal being approved by the Indian Cricket Board as well as the Competition Commission of India. That is expected to be done by September 2026. Until then, the current management structure will remain in place, which means there will be no change before the end of the 2026 season. The 19th edition of the IPL starts on Saturday with RCB in action against Sunrisers Hyderabad. And the new chairman of the franchise will be someone who has experience of playing in the IPL. Aryaman Birla is a former professional cricketer who played as a batter for the state of Madhya Pradesh in first-class cricket and was also part of Rajasthan Royals squad in IPL. He eventually retired from the sport in 2019 and transitioned into business. RCB was among the 8 original franchises when the IPL was established in 2008. It was the second most expensive franchise at the time and was bought for $111.6 million by the Vijay Mallya-owned United Breweries Group. Its current sale of $1.78 billion, representing an increase in value. The amount paid for the Rajasthan Royals was slightly below RCB's mark, but still worth a huge $1.63 billion. The franchise has been sold to a US-based consortium. However, what is more striking about the deal is that the late Shane Warne's family is also set to receive a sizable amount after the sale when Shane Warne was roped in by Rajasthan at the first ever IPL auction. The Australian, remember, negotiated a deal that secured him a 0.75% ownership stake for every season that he played for the franchise, in addition to a salary of $657,000. Warne, who was captain of the franchise, led the Royals to the title in the inaugural season of the IPL. He played for the Royals in 4 seasons, taking his total equity stake to 3%. And now, with the franchise's sale at $1.63 billion, Warne's family is set to earn $48.9 million. Remember, Shane Warne passed away in March 2022 due to a suspected heart attack. On that note, it's a wrap. This is me, Modi Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes